welcome to Upstage Downstage, with him, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And him, Stephen Rees, typically seated in the cheap seat.
This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen,
Things we've liked,
and may not have liked,
giving our complete unprofessional
and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew,
Take a seat,
and let's raise that curtain. On today's episode, we'll be discussing Muriel's Wedding the musical. We saw this production at Leicester Curve on the 19th of April 2025. A collaboration between Curve, Leicester and Global Creatures in association with Sydney Theatre Company, and is based on the beloved 1994 film of the same name. Featuring a book by the film's writer and director PJ Hogan, music and lyrics by Kate Miller-Hideki and Keir Nuttall, as well as additional songs by ABBA's Benny and Bjorn and Stig Anderson, this musical celebrated its world premiere in 2017 in Sydney, winning numerous awards, including 5 Helpman Awards and 7 Sydney Theatre Awards. So Stephen, what's it all about?
Undateable, unemployable, unstoppable, and stuck in the dead-end life in Pauper Spit. Muriel dreams of the perfect wedding. The white dress, the church, the attention. Unfortunately, there's one thing missing. A groom. Following her dreams to Sydney, Muriel ends up with everything she ever wanted. A man, a fortune and a million social media followers. That's when things start to go really wrong.
But first, our post-show opinion!
Mamma mia, I was holding on for a bumpy ride.
Whilst fun, this play went on and on and on and on and on.
So with all that said, let's set
the scene.
Okay, so on this episode of Upstage Downstage, we are here to, as we've already said in the introduction, talk about Muriel's wedding, and I'm sat here with my Muriel's wedding t-shirt.
Looking amazing.
Thank you very much, and it's a little bit tight. I thought I'd slim into it, but I've suddenly slimmed out of it. And so we have, on this particular edition of the podcast, we have my friend Jem Blake. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, like you say, I'm Jem Blake, and I am currently on a course called Book, Music and Lyrics in London, and I'm really enjoying it, and I'm on the advanced course, and basically I'm a lyricist on the course, and I get paired up with composers and write songs for musicals, so that's what I do.
So you're going to be our little insight to the workings of musicals and all the technical jargon which we sort of brush over because we don't know note, do we, Richard?
I don't know.
We don't know note.
Well, hopefully, hopefully I can be of some use.
Yeah, I think you will. I think you'll be very educational, if not for us, for our listening viewer.
Oh, good.
I say viewer, but we've got quite a few, haven't we now?
Why did they watch it?
Well, they're a listening viewer. They view to listen. Right, so let's set the scene. We'll just talk about what we see straight away. So the set, Richard, let's bring you in.
Oh, is it my turn?
Well, you might as well. You're
I'm here
through the
too.
Program. Yes, yes.
What we're seeing a lot of at the moment and is people are using a lot of circles for productions.
Yes.
So in this set and staging, they the proscenium arch was in a full circle, which is very similar to how they've done it for Lion Witch and the Wardrobe, for Sister Act, for a few other productions, but it's becoming a bit of a norm at the moment to, I suppose, in a way, draw you down to stage rather than just being a full sort of rectangle squared space. So each set of tabs were just a complete arch of gold, really, just to drag you in a little bit more, to make the stage feel more intimate, I suppose. And there was a video wall at the back. There was other elements that had video walls in them. So a lot of the staging was projected or was put on these LED walls, and then you had certain elements that were set pieces brought in to take you to different places. So that was the main premise of how the staging looked. I don't think there was a revolve here, was there?
Yes, because they moved about, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
But it was
in Act 2.
Yeah.
They used the revolve more in the second half than they did in the first.
Well, actually, it revolved in the wedding at the very end as well, didn't it?
Yeah.
Because they moved around like there were mannequins.
Yeah, but yeah, so and also we had a few doors on stage that just gave you the premise that you've got a wall behind certain scenes for bedrooms and living rooms and things like that.
Overall, I thought the set was quite striking, actually,
Yeah, it was.
when we went into the Curve. I thought it was nice and colourful. You had the name of the play. I mean, obviously you need that so you know what you're watching.
It was
wedding.
It was very bright and colourful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was very striking, like you say, and like the rings definitely gave it depth.
And also, just thinking about it now, you just said rings, wedding rings, bands.
Yeah.
That's what it's about, isn't it? The wedding. So, did anybody else think about that?
It's almost like it made sense. Gold rings.
yeah, but did you?
That's
think
why I
about
said
that at the
gold
time?
rings.
Did you?
Yeah.
When?
Earlier.
Yeah, but you gold rings, yeah, but not like wedding bands.
What, brass bands?
No.
Rubber bands.
Moving on.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, like you say, it was vibrant, it was colourful. It gave you the aesthetics of Muriel's Wedding, because Muriel's Wedding, even the film, was quite bright and brash as a film. Definitely had the Australian sun on it. It did feel like you'd got a level of sort of brightness on it. So they recreated that on stage, I think, really well. And also, I think the LED walls that they used and dropped in, the images they used felt designed for the production rather than just lifted out of Google. You know, I did feel like they spent time looking at it, because it's easy to just rely on an LED wall and go, we can put anything on it, but it does matter what you use it for. And I do think they used a lot of things where they used a lot of 3D effects on the images, so that it didn't just feel flat as a piece on that wall. So say in Muriel's bedroom, there was pictures on the wall and things like that, but they all felt lifted off the wall slightly, so they were stuck on blue tack rather than just being flat and stuck there. So it gave a bit of depth.
I always thought the set piece that came in that was for the wedding parlour, the wedding shop parlour. I thought that was really well executed as well, to be honest, because whilst it looked quite nice staging wise, when we've already said it's on the Revolve, they also had the ABBA characters stood in there like mannequins as well.
Yeah. And
that whole piece, for me, that was quite pivotal, because it was incorporating into the actual play of the whole theme of the Muriel's Wedding. But I actually quite liked the aesthetics of it.
Yeah, and I think they didn't, when we talk about the set pieces they used enough set pieces to enhance it. They didn't shy away from, oh, well, we'll just rely on these back walls and that's it. They still brought in those elements that you needed to create the biggest, to make it feel like you'd gone somewhere different.
What did you feel about the whole set piece, Jem?
I really thought it worked well. I really liked the walls that moved in, and I think all of it was very seamless on our performance.
Yeah.
I did actually talk to a friend who saw it a couple of nights later, and they had to stop the show for technical difficulties because the walls got stuck. I don't know whether it was on costume but the walls stopped working.
Yeah.
So they had to stop it. So obviously they are very reliant on that technical aspect of the set. But when it works, it looks fantastic.
Yes.
So I think, it is swings and roundabouts, but I think it's obviously a shame when it doesn't work, and that's just one of those things. But it did look very professional. I did feel like it had West End kind of vibes to it. It didn't feel like an amateurish production.
The thing is as well, it's a big risk when you're relying on so much technical things like walls that are LED and stuff like that. It's a little bit like I saw Hello Dolly in London, and they had to stop that in a similar way, because they couldn't run the last part of the first half, the last 10 minutes, because all the projections were out of sync.
Yeah.
So that meant that if they didn't restart it, the rest of the sort of everything that they'd worked on to make it look really good would have just had a blank wall at the back, and it wouldn't have worked. There was no, and when you watched it, you realised actually there was no way they could have replicated it, and that is a massive risk when you've got no way out other than stopping a show, So it takes a lot,
I think it does look magical when it works.
Yeah,
I think,
definitely.
and it obviously saves on space as well, and you're paying people, to make it to do that video design for you as well, and it does look good.
There's a whole industry in there that sometimes we don't even think about it, because when you think of stagecraft, you do think about the hands-on thing, but in terms of the technical aspect of it, you got, like you say, all those people who are doing the whole CGI, taking the pictures, or going around the place trying to find those images to recreate whatever scene they need. sometimes it does enhance it, but you can easily get away with not having it as well. But you are reliant on that technology working and being available and
in
so on and so
sync
forth.
with the
Yeah,
scene.
exactly.
I think you're also reliant on a decent graphic designer that understands theatre.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
if you don't understand what you're designing for, you could design a suite of images for this and just send them over. Whereas actually what you're designing is something that is cohesive across the whole production, and you've got to be
Yeah.
very careful that it's one vision. There's a little bit like the direction or something, that if your image is all mismatched, it won't translate as well.
And I think it did flow really
Yeah, it
well.
did. Yeah, it did work really well. Yeah.
Well, I really like the set, to be honest. It was one thing you didn't have to worry about. I mean,
Exactly,
we can talk
yeah.
about all the other aspects of it later on, but in terms of viewing it, aesthetically, it was very pleasing. It was
was,
very
yeah.
good. It was very slick, and I just liked everything about it in terms of that. Should we talk about the costumes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we saw quite a lot of Speedos. Calm down, Richard. Don't get too excited.
I don't know what you're trying to say.
I like the costumes. I thought the costumes. I think there was some very good. I think the bridal costumes were really great. I thought that scene, they did very well. I think you know, for certain scenes it felt spot on. I felt like the siblings, the costumes felt right for the siblings.
Yeah, and also with that, the whole. If we talk about the ABBA characters and those costumes that they were wearing, that was very in sync for them as well.
It didn't look like they'd
They look very much like them as well.
to me it felt like they'd thrown money at this for the costumes.
Yes,
They hadn't
yeah.
skimped on it. They'd really, everything looked as it was meant to be. I would say that the costumes, like for the Speedos and everything like that, every scene was very specific, and I kind of like that. I thought the bullies had great costumes. The girls that were the bullies, they were very, sleekly, modernly dressed, and I thought they looked a bit like wags, didn't they? But, with the handbags, I felt like they'd accessorised them well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were their costumes modern, or did they still have an 80s vibe to the 90s vibe?
You're coming into where I was going to come into this.
Okay.
Because,
Okay.
yes, they look good,
Yes.
Yeah.
but I struggled with the era that we were
Yeah.
in because it felt confused.
Yeah.
Because
thinking.
I felt like the mum was looking very 90s.
Yeah.
The dad was looking, yes, he was a businessman, but I think for me it was the contrast of a film that's set in a one period and stuck in a period, whereas this felt a little bit like, where are we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, why are ABBA as big as they are now when actually they were big in the 90s? Because the 80s and 90s, ABBA were bigger in Australia in a big way because you fixated on them more.
Near the back end of their run in the 80s, they sort of faded away because it was like unfashionable to like ABBA. But come 92,
exactly,
when ABBA Gold came out, they were at the peak
they were
again.
right to peak again.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm getting at is like just ABBA on their own were big in the 90s, and I think this is where it all started getting a bit like, where actually are we in the world? What era are we in? Because we've got mobile phones, but then ABBA are big, and it's like I was starting to get a little bit lost.
I think
with that because of the strength of using iconic moments from the film, but then trying to modernise something as well. And I think, because you can still use mobile phones, but they can be mobiles from the 90s. Because even Muriel's dress was very late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the initial scene with all the pink frills and the this, that and the other, it just felt a little bit like, where are we?
I think the costumes in Sydney are probably what confused me, probably more, gave a modern vibe, because in the song Sydney, it's basically saying you can be anyone that you want to be, and so they've got people dressed up as all sorts.
Yeah.
And those costumes could have been from any period. It really felt like we were in fancy dress mode in that particular song, and that threw me. I didn't know, it didn't feel like that was set in a time that I was lost a bit in what era we were meant to be in for that particular song.
So from a quality perspective, they were great.
There.
They were really good and really well made, really vibrant.
Visually great. But
I think it was just the positioning of it and where it is in time. It started to make you sort of question it a little bit, even at the start. Because if they'd have stuck in the era, it would have actually made it stronger, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it was also said that possibly Muriel could have been a bit dowdier.
Yes.
Like some of her costumes, I think you were saying that, Richard, before we started, that, you know,
Yes.
at the beginning, she's in a wedding.
I think
like,
so she's
bride's
already pristine,
maid dress,
and like
isn't she?
it's like you don't see the general sort of change of Muriel in the same way as you do in the film. You see her being quite awkward and quite separate to normality, whereas this, it was almost like she's already got a style and got a, you know, it just felt like we were
She's
straight
in wedding attire
Yeah.
right away, and
Yeah.
that's not really who she is. She's more, you know,
she's more
not
turn up in a
elegant
t-shirt
like
dress
that.
to a wedding, and
Yeah.
you know, it felt like we'd already jumped to,
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
you know.
Shall we move along to the set pieces or
Yeah.
major props or anything we need to talk about?
You mean the
The safe coming in or the
yeah, can do.
um.
You mean the scene changes?
Well, yeah, I suppose we could do that. Because most of it was things coming in from the sides, wasn't it? So let's talk about the things coming in from the side.
I'm just trying to think, like they had the sofa for
Yeah.
when you'd got
And the kitchen
the
set.
lots of kitchen, the bed for when we're in the,
The bed,
bedroom.
yeah. You had the HMS
Neptune section.
Neptune that came in as well as the arcade slots. They came
I
in,
thought
didn't
the
they?
arcade was brilliant.
Yeah.
I really like that visually, that scene. There's a lot of neon going on.
There was a lot of good striking elements that added up onto the space to change the scenes around,
Yeah, there
which I
was,
thought was
yeah.
quite good.
I think the only thing that got me was I just wish they'd have not made her like when Muriel moves to Sydney, she's selling neons. It was a bit random.
Yes,
It didn't really have it. Even I know she was in a video shop before, but
Yeah, in context she was, yeah.
to go completely from that to selling neons, it just felt it was a bit random. It was like, have we just done it for visual effect, or have we just? It was just a bit weird. It was such a
So question me this, Richard, right? If
such a niche
if
thing,
this is
I think.
updated where she's not actually selling videos anymore, why is it in, now that's what I call a musical, they're selling videos
exactly
in the present day?
Yeah, exactly. This is the thing. It was a bit like it could have been a Blockbuster because Blockbuster still existed. I mean, I think there was still one left in America, in Australia somewhere. But it's just a bit like, even if it was a HMV style place or something, it just felt a bit complete different. That actually, how many neon shops are there around? It was a bit like
It's very
No.
niche.
it's really
It is,
niche.
yeah.
Like it was really weird because it looked good, but it was a bit
Pointless. It was pointless because, at least, like we've said previously before recording this, that she's in the video shop because she likes that kind of era, but she's watching
Fixated
the video of
Diana's wedding.
Diana Spencer getting married to Prince Charles,
Yeah, exactly.
and that's what she keeps.
And that's the
watching over and
obsession for marriage, wedding.
So that's all in tying
Yeah.
with her working there and watching that. So what's the neon signs got to do with anything?
And that's what I mean. It didn't even even the subliminal plot of those, because that can enhance the storyline without. It's the visual things that don't need to be verbalized. Sometimes that can help you push the plot. And I don't know what those neons did. It was a bit like
Neons.
but it was a bit like. Well, it didn't have any relevance where the video shop did. It could have been that you worked in a mobile phone shop or something. I don't know. It could
I
have
think
been.
it was just for the look of it.
yeah.
They just thought, let's hang a nice few, neon signs on a
Yeah.
wall, and then we'll say it's a neon shop. And why? And then what I don't understand is why is the guy coming to that shop?
And this is what I mean. Why would he keep coming to the shop? Because you need a shop that you'd
go to
revisit.
on a regular basis.
You buy a neon, you put it on a wall. You don't go back next week and buy another neon.
Unless you've
Exactly,
got an
'cause-
obsession.
'cause-
That's pretty
exactly,
weird, isn't
Because
it?
the guy in the actual film, there's a reason why he goes there to rent these movies to see and speak to her in
Well,
the
it
first
could
place.
even have been a newsagent. It could have been
could have
something
been a
that
blooming
was like.
flower shop
It
at
could
the
have
end of
been
the day.
something that was just
Not as obscure.
yeah, exactly.
She could have been selling sunscreen.
She could have. As long as she
Sorry.
wears it as well, because you have to keep up your SPF.
Rub yourself up. Anyway, we digress. Is there anything else we need to talk about in terms of the set and the whole aesthetics of it before we move on?
Don't think so.
Then let's move on.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say, we're here for the drama.
Now we can get nitty gritty,
Don't-
or gritty and nitty, about all things writing wise, directorial.
I'm going to crochet instead if that's all right.
Acting. What are you going to do?
I'm
Crochet.
going to crochet instead.
You can crochet yourself a little review if you wish.
I will.
Oh my gosh.
Crochet away. What are our thoughts of the whole writing of this?
I think that the songs actually are quite relevant and, well done. But I think the book probably needed some more work, because I think it's all about, the structure of this, that
Yes.
it doesn't quite flow. I feel like a lot of the songs just felt like, bam, they were there in your face. And I was like, whoa, like, where did this come from? I feel like I hadn't had enough time to mull over the last scene to now be in this new space where we were for the next scene. It felt very quick. And from what I've gathered, they've cut down the show quite drastically. So probably what's happened is they've cut out important scenes that made it flow better. And then we've got these very fast transitions that just are too quick for us to take in as an audience, and you feel a bit thrown about. I mean, you get the general gist of it, but I mean, if you've watched the film, I think it's fine. But you can't rely on that audience having watched the film. When you write a show, you have to take it that this is a brand new audience that know nothing about the film. You're going to have your fans that are going to come and see it anyway. You know that that's who you're selling it to. But in order for it to be successful and, to have that longevity, you need, it needs to be understandable.
It still needs a structure, doesn't it?
Yeah, it needs a structure to be understandable for a wider audience that have never come into contact with this story before. So, yeah, I think, I feel like the lyricist and, the composer did a great job. I do think the book did need a bit of rejigging, possibly, or a bit more work to get that to flow.
I think as well they probably spent more time trying to modernise the script than actually tell the story. I think there was some moments where they probably got a little bit distracted from how to add things in that made it more modern. And then when they pulled things out, like you say, the things that fell on the floor and were pulled out of the script, to tighten it up, actually, you were left with something that it sort of makes you want to watch the film to know what actually happened, because...
Yeah, like they've created their own little potholes.
Yeah, they've created their own
potholes,
little...
not potholes. I suppose it works.
But I think, it's like you said, it's deteriorating. It's disorientating when you try and get what's happening sometimes. It jumps about a bit. Also, some of the songs, you have to take time to get to know them, and I feel like you've been chucked into the next song or an ABBA song, and then you can't remember it. Yeah. You haven't got the... It's all right relying on ABBA and using the songs because they're in the film, but I feel like, unfortunately, they stripped away your memory of the goodness in some of the songs that they've written, and it doesn't make them shine as much because you can't remember them throughout the plot, because it's harder because you've got an ABBA song thrown at you that everybody knows.
I think we all came away from this thinking, I can't remember what we've just listened to. Like,
yeah, exactly.
The songs are not memorable enough because, like we all agreed, they're laced with ABBA songs, which we do know.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is such a shame, because actually I listened back today to the original songs, and it's such a great score. I mean, they're real bops.
Yeah,
I mean, they're
exactly.
really... I mean, it's not perfect rhyme, but it's really fun, and it's such a shame, but you just can't compete with the ABBA songs, that people are going to go home and remember those ones, not the original material, which is just such a shame, I think, for the creative team.
I think they've suffocated themselves slightly by not necessarily paying attention to the structure as to where they're going, because we previously said about the whole reason of why Muriel wants to get married. What we saw, we didn't see that.
No,
but what we commented on, and I think you raised it first, Richard, was the point, because you'd previously watched the film straight beforehand.
Yeah, not long before,
Yeah.
Is about the whole, she's watching the video of Diana. But what I mentioned at the time was the fact that she was looking at wedding pictures as well at the very beginning.
Yeah, she was.
So we knew what she wanted. We knew straight away, out of life, what she wanted
and also
and what she
throughout
loved.
the film, she was building a scrapbook of people in weddings and getting married, and there was an obsession of being the white wedding bride, you know.
Yeah.
And
that did not come across.
It didn't come across at all in the musical.
No.
And if you hadn't have seen it, you wouldn't know
Just
that
like,
that was
she's
an
got a
obsession.
whim to get married.
Yeah,
You didn't know
exactly.
it was like an obsession.
No,
Because what I'd say now is when we started with Sunshine State of Mind, which was, I think you've said before that they always start with a big number, introducing everybody. And
they try and get the general ensemble on stage for an opening number, setting the scene, setting the world. So they had all the surfboards, and they'd got the bright lighting.
We've got to tell you in Australia, so we'll
we're in Australia. You know,
bleach blonde boys. You know,
the kangaroos out, the koalas.
Yeah, it's more the community, like the world that Muriel's in. I mean, I think they did a great job of that.
They did, but what I'd say is the next song which got me wound up, well, I don't suppose it got me wound up, I just thought, what the heck is this, is when Muriel was singing about the bouquet song.
Yeah.
That should have been a really lively number.
I think as well, you
what
know.
would you call it? Like
it was a ballad.
It was a ballad.
But the I Want number, when you have a character in a musical, you want to be behind them and rooting for them, and they also need to have a journey and an arc. And what they'd done here was they'd given us this first ballad from Muriel, and this is our first time seeing Muriel on stage. Yep. So really, we need to be behind her, and we need to be rooting for her. And she sings us this sad song that she wants to be, you know, get married and how nobody accepts her, which is valid, but at the same time, I wanted her to have a bit of tenacity and a bit of oomph to her. I wanted it to be more of a fighting spirit, like, I'm going to show them, you just watch, you watch me go. And then later on, when she gets ditched by these popular girls, then she can lose a bit of a spirit, and we see her being broken, and then that gives her a bit of an arc, and it changes. Whereas we just had this flat line the whole show. It was just like, in fact, if you go through the song list and you look at any song sang by Muriel, every single one that's a solo song is it's sad. It's a sad ballad. We don't have anything upbeat, and I think if they'd have started her off with that upbeat I Want song, like, I'm going to show them, just you watch, and then we see her get broken, I think that would have been more interesting a journey.
For example,
but then that goes into the film where actually that broken bit then leads into a meeting ronda at her lowest point.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment you've already got a lowest point before you've even got there. You've not built that low point.
Yeah.
So you can't then bump into that person that changes you, you know, and I think that's missing.
In Hairspray, for example, Good Morning Baltimore, you know exactly that Tracy Turnblad, what she wants, and that's very uplifting. She's very jolly. It needed something like that for Muriel to give a great big energy straight from the start, coming straight off that big number for everybody.
And I think it would have worked better because when these popular girls then ditch her and say, you're not good enough for us, she's not expecting it.
No.
Yeah.
She's like, oh my goodness, like, and then that would break her more and make her more upset. And I think, whereas if she's already like, oh, I don't fit in, she's already aware of her situation. Whereas if she's kind of like, oh, you know, I'm going to do it, I'm going to prove it to them. And then all of a sudden her friends just go, oh, we don't want to hang out with you anymore. It's kind of like she's then shocked. So it creates more emotion because she wasn't ready for it. Whereas it felt like she was already realising that she didn't fit in.
It's almost like you've got to fuel the delusion.
Yeah.
As in, what was missing in the film, she's delusional till that point she realises she's not in favour with the people.
Yeah.
It's like you've almost got to make her delusional, and it's like they were worried about, I don't know how, it's like the writing's almost like worried about making her delusional. It's like, no, you can be lost in your own space at that point. You've got to just think, well, I'm fine. I don't need to change. I'm being me. She was quite confident even before she got like obsessed with, you know, she wanted to be.
Well, it wasn't until she met Rhonda where Rhonda calls them out for being the fake friends that they are.
Exactly.
So it does lead into the fact that she was delusional, thinking,
oh,
they're just being them, aren't they? You know, I am the odd one out, but I still want to be their friend.
Because delusion, it makes sense with the obsessed with ABBA as well, because not everybody in her world was obsessed with ABBA. She can be delusional, and that's her safe space. Her ABBA is her safe space, and it's like, she's allowed to be that, and that's what she does. And and it
she's
just
too self-aware. I think from the beginning, like, if you're self-aware, you like falling into this victimhood of woe is me, and it's very hard for an audience to get behind that.
Exactly.
Whereas if she's
Absolutely.
delusional, you're kind of like, oh gosh, Muriel, like you're not seeing things straight.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you'll still get the same effect. You'll still feel sorry for her, but you'll be rooting for her because you're like, oh,
Exactly.
I hope that she can realise what
you're allowed
she's
to
doing
be
here.
different as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got no one to root for really in this, because even during like the second act, I felt like it's called Muriel's wedding, but in no way is this play about her.
Yeah, exactly.
It stopped being about her.
It was very much
Yeah.
about the family unit and about
Yeah,
her
it
mum.
felt like everybody else.
Yeah.
Because even at the very beginning of Act 2, it was about Bryce,
yeah.
her love interest. It should be about her setting the scene. So when we finished the end of Act 1, it was about her being in the wedding
Shot.
I thought that should have been the opening number for Act 2,
Yeah.
because it's about her.
Yeah, exactly. But even coming on to the wedding thing, going in the wedding shot, there was no power to it, because actually in the film, there's a scene where she's waiting for a bus, and instead of getting the bus, she runs into the shop because she's that obsessed with wedding
it's caught her
dresses.
eye, yeah.
She's caught her eye, and she's like, I just need to go and try another dress on and make another story up. You
Yeah.
felt like
It's
there was
her-
no obsession.
Well,
as
it's-
in, like, I'm going to do this, but instead I'm going to go and, I need to fill my need. It's like that.
It's her safe space again,
Exactly.
isn't it? It's about her, because she can't get to grips with people in reality. She can't make friends. She's awkward. She's socially awkward. Her happy space is being where she's, because she's not loved at
No.
home.
No.
So she'll find love in that space where she's shopping. She's either shopping for wedding dresses or listening to her music.
And also, she's creating an alter ego when she goes in those wedding shops.
Yeah.
Because every time she went in one, she made a different story up. That, can you take a picture of me? Because my nan's dying and I need a picture to send her and
Or
show
my
her.
sister's
When
in
actually it's to
hospital,
put in a
yeah.
book to say, it didn't feel like there was enough of that to fuel her obsession that she's that obsessed in her safe space that she wants to be there and that person.
But they felt like they came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I was confused because I purposely didn't rewatch the film before I went to see it, and I did watch it for the first time with you, Stephen, but it was quite a while back.
was, yeah.
So it's like I didn't refresh my memory on purpose because I wanted to see if I could follow this from the perspective of like a newer audience member. And it just felt a bit out of place, and I didn't understand why we kept coming back to this bridal shop. Like I think the obsession just wasn't clear enough, like you say.
And I think also the to go on to the next level of that is when she finally finds her groom by going through ulterior motives, and as in she finds him on an app. We'll talk about that in a bit. It was like the obsession of he's less important than her wearing that dress. She wants to wear that dress, so she will marry anybody. She's actually, I want to go through with it. You didn't feel that. You just felt like, oh yeah, they're going to get married now, and all of a sudden he's getting married, and it's like that was her ultimate aim, to walk down that aisle and be in a wedding dress, and it still didn't feel.
And this
the
is
level of
why
obsession.
the book is so important,
exactly.
because
Yeah.
you've got to, when you write that book, you have to go through it beat by beat.
Yeah, exactly.
And make sure you've got the pacing right, because if the pacing's wrong, you're going to lose an audience. And, and I think this whole thing about updating it as well, when you look at the film, you have to strip it back to what it really is about and pick, a couple of core themes that you're going to focus on. And I think when you start updating and modernising things, you're throwing in all these other themes, and that's when it gets lost, because then you don't know what you're focusing on. And then there's too many themes to be coming back to. I think that was probably the issue that they had.
Do you think then that whilst they were focusing on these other little updated things, that they lost sight of the character, Muriel? Because I think they have.
I think they did.
I think so as well. I don't think they've really looked into what has happened with these updates. I don't think they've quite understood how it's changed the character. And I think in Act 2 at some point she wants to be a social media star, and that just came out of nowhere. It was like
That was another update.
It was weird.
It just didn't seem to make sense to me. The whole point of the film, the film is that she doesn't feel validated as a person, and she believes that the only way people will accept her is if she's married to somebody successful that other people see as being a high standing member of society. And whereas this went from being I need to get married to I need to be famous as well, which is a different. It was just a different. It kind of took spins it onto a new level, like Well,
it's a different story they're trying to tell, isn't it? So why didn't they just keep it in 1994?
Exactly.
When it was set?
And that's what I think that's what frustrated me, for me, to be honest, because Rhonda's character is quite a strong character, and I feel like Rhonda was there for a bit, but in the musical she was sort of there, but it was a bit, I don't know, I think she was quite pivotal in the change of Muriel. It didn't mean Muriel changed, because her obsession still came out when they were living together. She hid the book of her weddings that she'd got pictures of her in a wedding dress under her bed, even from Rhonda.
Well, Rhonda was Muriel's confidence, really.
Rhonda. But also, even when Rhonda and Muriel met, Muriel was still lying to Rhonda, creating an alter ego of this person that's bigger than she actually is in reality back at home. And it's like, but Rhonda saw through that, and I just felt like the focus sort of drifted from the core part of the film, not just the film, but the storyline. I feel like we drifted around a bit, and sort of watered it down a little bit.
Yeah.
It's because the storyline is about Muriel.
It is, yeah.
So they clearly lost focus on who Muriel was to fit in these little points.
But also, it's called Muriel's Wedding. And where's the build-up to that? It's like that whole underlying tone of the wedding. It's not about the wedding at the end. It's about all of it.
It's quite similar to when we went to see Marigold Hotel.
Yes.
And I think I made a comment of it being like a post-it note scenes.
Yes,
this
exactly.
This happened, and nothing linked up or merged at all. This is verging on that. It's a little bit better, but it's sort of verging on that. Because one thing that got me was near the end of Act 1, it was when Rhonda became ill in the club.
Yeah.
She collapsed. It felt like that should have been the interval.
Definitely.
But it carried on.
We've got to have another song.
We were all waiting, weren't we? Everybody was like on edge, wanting to
And
clap.
he went to full blackout as well.
And then we all gave
still
a round of
came out with
applause,
another
sort of.
singing.
Yeah. And
it
it
was
carried
really
on.
weird.
It really felt like that was the clear, definitive end of Act 1.
That's how it should have happened.
And you should always end like your first act on like oh my gosh,
a drama,
high
it's
tension,
an EastEnders moment,
like
isn't
a
it?
problem, cliffhanger, because
Yeah.
you want that audience to come in
back.
for Act 2.
Yeah.
Like, whereas if you end on it all happy, people are going to be like, oh well, I'll come back for Act 2, but you need to create that tension
Exactly.
there.
Yeah.
And that's why the next scene after that, with Muriel in the wedding parlour, choosing dresses, that should have been the opening for Act 2.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Because it's setting up Muriel's wedding.
Yeah.
So she's deluding herself as to what's happened in reality. Rhonda losing her legs.
She's got to go and distract herself and get back. It's like taking a drug. Her drug is going and trying a wedding dress on. That's something that's close to her heart underneath.
And also it's bringing the
It's a
narrative back
distraction.
down to it being about Muriel wanting to get married.
Exactly. Yeah.
So why they had the interval after that, I don't know. It does not make sense.
It felt
structurally.
very jarring to actually go from that scene. I wasn't mentally prepared.
It was too quick.
To come to this big bridal scene. So a friend's just, had this accident that's quite serious, and we're like, oh my gosh. And then all of a sudden we're expected to enjoy this huge bridal scene, which, was really fun and upbeat. And I'm like, I can't enjoy this because the scene before was just too harrowing and it was too sudden. And I think if they'd have had the bridal scene after the interval, I think that
we would have had more time.
We would have had more time to process, and also it gives you that sense that a bit of time's moved on. So the interval, I can come back and go, oh, maybe a bit of time's passed here. Whereas because it happened straight afterwards, in my head, she's gone out, and it's the first thing she's done as soon as this accident's happened.
I think also, talk about the speed. Going from Sydney, the song that's basically we've moved to Sydney, to then all of a sudden we're in the gutter, which is the club, we've moved very quickly.
Very quick.
Yeah.
When actually in the film, they've lived there for quite a while in the flat together. They've got to know each other. It's normality. You know, when Bryce comes in the house, or the love interest to Muriel, they are very much, it's a lived in, there's pants on the floor, there's this, that and the other. It's a very lived in girls' flat where they've lived in that world. And you
can
know,
believe
so
it's been a couple of weeks.
Whatever. But if you believe time's passed. Whereas I felt like we were just thrust into the fact that we're in a club and she's going to lose her legs, and it's like what?
First night out.
That's what it felt like.
First night out, my best mate's lost her legs.
Yeah. and actually, well, it is. She's legless.
Yeah. What happens when you get to Sydney? It's drag queens.
Yeah,
as soon as they
exactly.
pop out, they start.
That's it. Yeah.
Drink a bit of
couple
this.
of sherbets and off you go.
That's it.
But I think as well, talking about this moment, I think we lost some intimacy that was in the film, where I felt that Rhonda, they wanted to make it a big event where she loses her legs in the actual. Lose her legs. She doesn't lose them completely. She just loses use of her legs.
She popped them down somewhere.
Where did I put
them?
I didn't.
They're with my car keys. Where are they?
But I feel like it was done in such a way that it felt a little bit almost expected that, we've got to make it dramatic for her to lose her legs. And I think there's nothing more memorable than actually it being something in such an intimate space like their flat, which happened in the film.
Yep.
You know, and you don't always need to compare films to musicals, or, you know, you don't always have to do that. But I think there's something quite sobering as a whole event that actually brings you back down to earth, that actually it's happened after the night out, first thing in the morning, which is what happened on the film, where you wake up after having an amazing night. Rhonda had slept with 2 guys. You know, she's had an amazing out-of-world experience, and then you wake up in the morning and the hangover is, that's the last night you're ever going to have that's any good. You know, you might never get back to that because you've now just lost everything and the feeling in your legs and this, that and the other. I just felt like we lost that completely by doing it in a club because we're all dancing and this, that. It just felt a bit...
They wanted to use the ensemble more. They were like thinking, how can we get the
that's what
ensemble
it felt
in?
like. We need to shove them all
get
in.
them on again.
But there's nothing more sobering than bring it all down to a very intimate, tight space and do it there. And I just think that would have had more power.
It might have even worked had they have been in that club, but then Rhonda dragged 2 blokes back to the cubicles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just there, and then
just pull it down a bit, rather than, because also when it happened, there was still people around. There was noise. It was like, it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel strong enough to.
It could have happened in like if they were both in the toilets of the club rather than the flat.
Because there was a moment where it's like. They were laughing in the flat, and Rhonda's on the floor, and she's like, let's get up. She's like, I can't. Yeah. And it's like something so simple, whereas they just had to make it like drama.
They should have just copied the film and done the whole beanbag situation, really.
And I just think it would have
drew emphasis away, didn't it?
It did. I think that's what I mean. I think it's... You normally find that these things happen in so simple terms, like in life, that something like that happens. It doesn't have to be dramatic.
It doesn't have to be a big song and dance.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And exactly that.
Yeah.
Because then that puts more weight on the struggle to get back, because you see that life strip away in front of you, and that has an effect as well.
One thing that stuck out, another thing I should say, when we did come to Act 2, we had a whole new scene that started, which really shouldn't have done. It's called Never Stick Your Neck Out. And this was a load of bin men.
It was a construction site, wasn't it?
It was. I don't understand, but I'm sure they had black bags.
They were playing black bag bingo, weren't we? Because we kept seeing the same ones.
It was just a load of people in high-vis vests, surely.
It was the funniest thing.
And it was like really random, but it was setting up the Bryce character, who is interested in Muriel, but he had a whole solo. Why?
I felt like we were trying to recreate Skid Row. Because it was like, let's look like we're on with the back streets of Sydney to,
Yeah, he
swing a bag round.
He was singing to his mate, wasn't he? He was saying, I'm really into this girl. And he talks about, I've messaged my dad, and this is what my dad said. And then he hands his phone over to his mate, and then his mate starts singing the text of what his dad said. Like, don't be optimistic, and it's all about don't get your hopes up and things like that. But then we've got a whole construction site in these like high-vis vests. I mean, I was pretty impressed by when they got the ladder and they were all holding the ladder and he climbed
yeah,
the
yeah,
whole way
that
up the
was
ladder. I
good,
mean,
that
that was
was.
visually very impressive. But I didn't understand who these construction people were, unless they were his
formed
mates.
YMCA, didn't they? They were the
I mean,
village people.
I mean, to be fair, I don't know what jobs they were actually
Probably.
doing because they kept walking from one side of the stage to another. They
looking
were the
for
same
the bin- they were
people. I
looking for the
thought, I'm sure
rubbish.
I've seen you walk past before. You know.
It was confusing.
They were
I
the
think.
churchgoers in the other scene. I mean, it was a little. It was just nonsense. To be fair, it should never have started with that. And at the end of the day, we don't need to know about Bryce and his needing to build up the courage because it's not about him. If he wanted to ask her out, he can just be in that particular seat in the neon shop or whatever, feeling a bit awkward, going.
That's all we need.
Shall I? Oh no. Do you want any help with that?
But
No,
even
do
the
you know what I
thing
mean?
is-
Like you could act to that rather than have a whole.
We mentioned the
song about
beanbag scene.
it.
That shows a lot of awkwardness because they still don't follow through on the beanbag because they're
unsure how to
fumbling
fumble,
about
yeah.
and you can see that
You can't even fumble
they
properly.
can't. Yeah, exactly. So it drives that.
Yeah.
I feel like we'd already got enough from Bryce because in Act 1 we've got Strangely Perfect Stranger where he bumps into her in the neon shop.
Exactly.
And we've already had that initial
Interaction.
oh, I kind of like this girl.
Yeah, we don't need
Yeah.
it again.
And so, whereas I think because they thought, oh, we need to make the romantic, lead for her more prominent, let's try and introduce him a bit more. But, like, once again, they've tried to expand characters, which I understand, but it doesn't lend itself to the core theme.
Not when she's going to go and marry the Russian swimmer
No, exactly.
as well later on. You know,
I
he's
think-
always going to be like a beeline character. But bearing in mind, we've also not had much of Betty as such, the mother.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's the thing, like, so...
We didn't have any struggle, and that got me a little bit because Betty was all. You had moments where Betty rang Muriel to say where's the money or where's this, and in the film there was still links through, like you always saw something or.
We could have done with like a motif for her throughout the show.
Yeah, to build
like,
it up.
to show. So when you do lose her in Act 2, that you feel something, because it's kind of like, I felt a bit empty.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You feel a bit like, we've not put enough time into this character for me to be emotionally invested in this. And although it's sad, like, I think it doesn't hit the same way.
it's because she was quite happy doing what she was doing throughout, though. There was no like, apart from was the one scene where she was a bit on the wrong side of Bill, her husband. I think it's Bill, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think they enhanced the struggle she was getting, or the fact that nobody would listen to her,
Or the depression.
and all those bits. I don't think they pushed it enough.
It was too
sometimes.
subtle.
Yeah, it
I think
was.
there were very small hints. I did see it, but it wasn't enough. There's too much other things going on, really, for me. Like other.
And we talk about not being subtle enough. Rhonda, the same, the recovery process.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
that's-
she recovered instantly as far as it looked. She didn't even, she tried to walk a few bits on a sort of walker
On the poles.
in rehab, but that was it. We didn't really see a lot. There was no struggle.
No, she did about 3 paces,
Yeah.
and then that was it. She'd lost her rag. It's like,
Exactly,
really?
yeah. And it was, but even when she lost the rag, she didn't come across as angry or she just almost gave up. It was just a bit weird. It was really weird to,
And
I
they
feel
could
like
have fixed that so
Yeah.
easily. Like, he can easily make time look like it's passing in a song.
Exactly.
You can, in a short amount of time, you can show time passing. It can be done.
I think we've spent more time on the glitz and glamour and not the core of the story. Like we say with the book, I feel like we did all the great happy jolly, like big scene ensemble pieces, but the actual storyline strength was keeling over a little bit because we'd not got enough of the depth in there. Because
Adding in too many new
when you watch
themes.
when you watch the film,
Yeah.
it's an hour and 46 minutes long.
This was about 5 hours.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if you
Felt
can
it.
if you can get that storyline with that level of depth in hour and 46,
Yeah.
you should be able to use that and make it into a musical. As in use the power of that storyline.
And you shouldn't be adding songs on top of.
Exactly.
Like, for every so many pages of dialogue, that should be a song. So you should be
yeah.
taking out
Yeah.
bits of scene and then editing that into a
Exactly.
song, so that then because otherwise you're just going to have a really long musical with the
But
book
that might
and
be
songs
how
on
they've done it.
top.
You know how they said they've cut a lot? It might have been like that.
Yeah, I
It
think
might have been a long musical with things shoved in all the time.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know how much more there was in it.
Yeah, well, they could have cut a lot more out, to be fair, looking at the song list. Is there anything else we need to talk about with some of these songs? The wedding, maybe?
I think everybody else got the good songs. I think that
Yeah,
was
exactly.
that. I feel for a leading lady, it's such a shame
I think
that everyone else stole the thunder of Muriel. Like, I really liked, like I say, Tanya, Cheryl, Nicole and Janine, they were running away with it. They were fun. They had all the very boppy songs. Obviously, they were mean. I thought
they were
Rhonda,
very stereotypical, like Mean Girls had.
Yeah, very.
It again was the similar setup, wasn't it?
I felt that Rhonda had some great songs. I felt like she had the uplifting songs. I mean, I really felt that they gave the fun boppy songs to every other character in the show, and because you've got the ABBA songs as well, you're competing with ABBA, and then Muriel just needs some upbeat songs or something.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I suppose, is it easier to write for nasty characters?
It is.
You know what I mean? What I'm saying
sort
is,
of.
but can you get lost in the fact that you can write good songs for your protagonists, or you know what I mean? You can get lost in because you lose your sight of, I want to write a good song, a gritty song, or so. Those are the ones that you like writing a baddie song, aren't you? It's like you can have a bit of fun with that.
Yeah.
And then lose sight of the
because they're
the
more,
core character,
They're more exciting, but I think this just comes back to the fact that what we've already said, that they didn't know how to write Muriel. They've already lost her character
her voice
by stripping it away. Exactly, they've taken her voice away, and they didn't know what to do in terms of what songs to give her.
Exactly.
When is her powerful beats? How is she feeling? We don't know. All we know is she just went through this, and everything happened around her.
And yet I feel the sound world for everybody else was actually quite spot on.
It was, yeah.
Even the miniature characters that were her family.
Yeah, I felt it was just what they sang. They had a repetitive motif that came back for the siblings. And automatically, with a few notes, I knew they were lazy. I knew exactly who these people were.
But the thing is,
that was good, that was.
I'm also going to not sum up, but point something out.
Oh, yeah.
You're wearing a T-shirt that says "You're terrible, Muriel."
Yeah.
Right? What part of this production was she terrible? Because terrible means you're a little bit like go against the wind, or you're a little bit like I'm going to play with fire a little bit. There's a spark in her in the film that was almost like
she brought shame to the family. She stole the money.
She was a good liar. She was a good. She was good at fibbing to get what she wanted. So they've lost that element of lying on the spot and just like making things up to put her in a position where she can sit with people. Or
she didn't come.
It's like saying you've slept with somebody when you haven't, or it's that there was none of that. Like
she didn't come across
you're
as,
awful, Muriel. You know what I mean? It's like she didn't fuel that narrative that then when you're terrible, Muriel said, well, why is she terrible? Because she's not. It wasn't there, was it?
She didn't come across as quick-witted.
No.
I think they dumbed her down. Like I say, they gave her this victim mentality.
Yeah.
Like she was too self-aware, and she was like, "Oh, woe is me." And it was just they got trapped in that mentality, I think, of and like I would have loved to have seen the quick-witted. I would have loved to have seen her stealing the dress from the shop.
Yeah.
To see that rebellious side of her before the wedding, because I would have loved to have seen her in something frumpy at the beginning, and see her maybe lie to the cashier or lie to somebody, so we get an idea of who she is from the beginning.
Yeah.
And then when she steals the dresses, I was shocked. I was like, oh my goodness, like we're meant to be rooting for her, but she's just stolen a dress. Immediately off the bat, how can we root for her? Like,
and that's it's like they were worried about doing that, but actually that they've missed the whole point.
Yeah,
she was terrible underneath. To take all that money off her mum and the credit card and the blank check in the film, but to do that and then run away and spend all your family's earnings, that is terrible. But they didn't really dwell on it much, and it's like she did that to live a life that she doesn't live. She did it to become this other person, and I just felt like they missed out on the terrible bit that's the undertone.
It was just that one line, wasn't it, from the character when she said it?
But I don't know if you noticed, she said it twice.
Oh, did she?
Yeah. She said it twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To emphasise it in case you didn't get it the first time.
In case you fell asleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Because it was like, for me, it was like she always came up smelling of roses throughout the film, in the sense of, even though she was terrible, her dad stuck up for her. Her mum diverted for her. Or somebody always got her out, like nicking the dress. You know, her dad got her out of it. I can't believe Muriel did that. You know, it's like
Yeah, she was very
always
cheeky.
seemed to, yeah.
But, I mean, whilst in the actual stage version, she did do those things, because part of that is narrative of her doing that. I don't know how much we should be dwelling on those things, but I think for her to do such a thing, she needs something to counteract that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And probably that's what was missing. We didn't have much of that counteracting of the mother going mad or being...
Because even though she stuck up for her, she still would, a conscience would kick in, or there'd be something behind the scenes that had been
We only really saw the father lose his rag, but everything else just... There was no, because consequences as such.
The things on the low boil with her mum as well was...
Low boil on a bum?
Low boil, yeah. Low boil on a mum. On the moment where they're having the meal in the casino and the dad is flirting with the owner of with Deirdre,
yeah.
It's fueling the fire.
Yeah.
It's fueling the depression because she's getting overlooked or bypassed. And I feel like that's what they didn't keep going throughout it, really.
The one thing that I did like, a change that they did make, is I liked the way that they visually put ABBA into it.
Yeah.
Because I think that, you know, because obviously she just listens to ABBA, you know, at home, and so we don't see them in person as much probably in the film. But I liked the fact that ABBA were kind of there with her, and it felt like her decisions were being influenced by them, who, like, you know, we actually physically had all four of them on stage surrounding her while they were singing to her. And
it was the Jiminy Cricket conscience thing,
yeah.
wasn't it?
Well, actually, I mean, I liked it as well. I thought they were great.
It was clever.
But do we think that was actually a bad move? Because with them actually physically there singing and being part of it, does it diminish Muriel and the play itself, do we think?
I think it started to detract from...
Was it more play for ABBA, with ABBA?
You couldn't work out whether it was a decent tribute act for ABBA and there's a story underneath. It was hard because they're so domineering.
And they were good performers, being
yeah,
but as a production, like we've said how ABBA's songs detracted from the production, it did it in physical form sometimes as well. It's
then that obstacle of, if you are going to include ABBA, because they could have taken ABBA out of it. I mean, it would have been a big... it's hard to do.
They took Fernando out.
Yeah.
I'm not impressed with that.
They could have taken ABBA out of it, or had ABBA just on in the background, like at the beginning of scenes, you know. But I think they were playing on... If you're going to have an ABBA song in it and you want to really play on it, you know, to have them physically on stage, and, you know, it does provide lots of opportunity for razzle dazzle like performances. So, and it did add more sparkle and a different universe as well, like, because then we went from her delusion to, like, I suppose that showed a bit of delusion from her whenever we saw ABBA, because we knew they weren't really there. We knew that ABBA weren't really talking to her.
So ABBA in the wedding shop, for example, that makes sense because she's slightly deluded in a little fantasy world.
Yeah.
And if she's in a safe space, then she's probably listening in her mind, ABBA songs, I do, or whatever. So that sort of makes sense. But
I think for me, it might have helped if, you know, the first scene when they appeared when she's in a bedroom.
Yes.
If they'd appeared in video form on one of the pictures.
Like a poster that moved.
Like one of the posters that moved, a bit Harry Potter style.
Yeah, yeah.
If they'd have done that and built up to them seeing them in full form, it might have been better.
Oh, yeah.
But because if they'd have just started with... Because they just started with them, that's it, full force.
Yeah.
If their first entrance...
Yeah, they could have held them back to the second act or something.
No, if the first entrance was the wedding scene, where they were just statues, that would have had far more impact, because you'd be like, they're actually here as well, as being... You're almost being fed images of them all the way through until the scene where the wedding shop, until that happens, that would have had more power.
Yeah.
Because you'd have gone... They're not just wearing wedding dresses. That's ABBA.
They are ABBA.
That would have had more, like,
Yeah.
more
If they
impact.
held them back a bit.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
yeah.
You know, just as it's a less expected moment.
Well, then you don't necessarily need to have the ABBA songs sung out loud. You could just have them like little snippets of the song playing in the background or whatever, whilst the main musical, takes centre stage.
But also, you could have had like the interactive pictures or whatever deliver dialogue rather than songs.
Yeah.
So, like we saw in the Dolly Parton.
Here You Come Again.
Here You Come Again. In Here You Come Again, which had featured Dolly Parton, that was like subconscious moment.
Yeah.
If they'd have just come in at that point to talk to her, to feed the delusion, after a bit of ABBA had played, they could have helped to guide her on a way or something. And then it could have happened later down the line as well. Before then you see them in the wedding shop. So it just fuels a bit of a, you know...
I think they did a little bit of that for the Money, Money, Money one. I'm sure there was a little bit of dialogue between them and her
Yeah.
on that one. But yeah, if you just strip the group back a bit, so it was more of a surprise, because then they could have actually, when it was I Do, I Do, I Do, they could have used that song and that one only where they fully performed that.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, because then that way we're not taking this as an ABBA play, another ABBA play, but we're just including them in.
And the thing is, you could have had Benny and Bjorn as the vicars, and you could have had the other two as and Agneta and
the bridesmaids.
As the bridesmaids. You could have done something really played with it, and
Anita
Dobson. Yeah, Anita Dobson. But you know what I mean. It could have had you could have played with it a bit more than just we're going to put ABBA on.
Yeah,
you know. And I think they could have had more of a nudge, wink, wink. Even if also they could have had moments where they didn't actually acknowledge that they were there. Yeah, they were just in the background in places.
And this is where are they putting ABBA in because they know that people who've seen the film are ABBA fans, and are they just doing it for the ABBA fans?
I think they've emphasised the ABBA. Said that a bit wrong. I think they've emphasised ABBA far too much for them to make it a play about ABBA just to get bums on seats.
Yeah,
I find by sticking these songs in, because if you'd have done what we say. Just do what we say, basically.
What do we know?
Just if they just stripped it back a bit, you know, then we would have enjoyed Muriel's Wedding, the musical, as being the musical, and listened to these songs better. But it's like they're hiding behind the ABBA songs, in a way, because as we've already said, we don't remember any of these songs, but we know ABBA, and that's dangerous.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, I'm glad you all agree with me. Before we move on, there's another particular thing that we can pick up on the writing, the whole SOS song of ABBA.
Yeah,
where
that
Betty
was very strange.
has died. She's taken her life.
Yeah.
And to me, what did I say to you at the time, Jem?
Well, you were saying, why are ABBA making her die, weren't you?
Yeah,
because it was staged in a very bizarre way. Like the construct in the show that they've set up is that only Muriel can see ABBA because she's the deluded one, so only she can see them. And then all of a sudden, ABBA's on stage with Muriel's mother, and then
like an ethereal dream
it was
sequence.
very bizarre. Like, there's a piano on stage, the stage was rotating, and it was almost like, you know, a dying sequence, and they're like kind of beckoning.
ABBA was beckoning her to take her life.
Yeah.
And her husband appears, you know.
Yeah. It was
Don't worry about it, your life is crap. Die.
Die. Come with us.
Listen to ABBA
Come
and
with
die.
They were like, it was like, you know, it's better over on this side. But it's like, also, when it was set, were ABBA dead? Like, when did ABBA die? Like, you know, are all of ABBA dead? Like, because but why would they be on the other side? It was a bit
why did
like
they just
strange.
they should have put the song on. It's true, I die, I die, I die, I die, I die. They should have actually changed the lyrics for that.
But I think also, if we'd have talked, you know, just get back to what we've just talked about, if ABBA had been more surreal throughout the production, that might have made more sense. Because if you'd have made them more
pop up, not just for Muriel.
Because if you'd have also worked on, maybe Muriel's found ABBA because of her mum, and there was a few exchanges in the first half that they communally liked ABBA, and it was the son or the dad that told them to turn it off. It's like, if you'd have had more of that, it would have made sense. But the fact that you didn't see any of that.
Because what we know is that Betty, the mother, was listening to the ABBA tapes, Muriel's ABBA tapes,
Yeah.
in a way to connect herself with her daughter who isn't
Yeah.
there anymore, because Betty is feeling isolated in her family.
Yeah.
And, I mean, she feels
But you not
isolated
once saw her
anyway,
go in
but-
a bedroom to do that, did you?
No. And it
And-
just felt like a really strange death sequence.
It was
and
just-
very bizarre to
I feel like
make
they'd-
ABBA
but take her over the other side.
Some say listening to ABBA will make you want to kill yourself anyway. I'm not one of them.
I'm not
I don't
either.
understand that. But how they've approached this,
But
is
I also-
fine. Just
The
do away with
staging-
yourself.
the
It's
staging could have
okay.
been improved.
But also, sometimes I ask myself, did they think of that before they wrote it, or did they come up with that in isolation? They knew that's what they wanted to do, because some people that create productions do it the wrong way round almost. They'll come up with an idea and then not think how it fits into the rest of the... You know what I mean? They'll write that piece on its own because they're like, that's how I want that person to end. But then they've not thought of the journey up to that point sometimes. It's like in the sort of styling of it.
I don't know what kind of thinking has been taking place, but there wasn't much of it.
No, there wasn't.
I think if the staging had been different, if we could have had some sense that Muriel wasn't there, but I would have liked Muriel's presence on stage in a surreal way.
Yeah.
And then, the mother, if we could have seen the mother like putting on, the record, or if we could have seen her playing it and then ABBA show up and they're singing, I think that could have been different. But it was just, there was no context to why ABBA just appeared. It broke the context, like the construct, should I say, that only Muriel could see them. And I think that was the problem. It was like, what? This is weird. Why is the mum seeing
It was
them now?
just trying to shoehorn ABBA back in the scene that they didn't know how to handle,
Yeah.
really. To
Yeah,
cover this
musicalise
scene.
the mother's death.
Yeah, I don't know. It still baffles me as to why they've used ABBA, SOS in particularly. I mean, yeah, it's...
SOS is a cry for help, but
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
it's a bit too late. Like, this isn't SOS,
Yeah.
this is after SOS. This is too late now. Like, it wasn't quite
Get the coroner.
the right number.
Bag the body. That's what it should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, or So Long. If they'd have sang So Long, See You Honey. Should we move along to the whole direction of this? How did
Yeah.
everyone feel in terms of the choreography and the direction? Because I felt it was all right. The whole scene changes and the dance.
I mean, the
moves
choreography
and
was
stuff.
good. I mean,
It was
the
strong.
Yeah.
numbers were, the performance style of it was good. But you're tied by the book you've got. Direction-wise, everything was there. There wasn't really any dropped vocals, or you could hear everybody.
Yeah.
There's one particular scene that did stand out for me, which was the deck chair scene, which should have been the Fernando scene.
Yeah.
Which I
yeah.
said, it was just so static.
You really did not like that scene.
No, because they mirrored it in... I mean, that was in Act 1. They mirrored it again in Act 2 with Muriel and Rhonda, because by this time Rhonda was sat in her wheelchair at this point, and it was just so static.
And if they'd have had Rhonda standing up more, that first song, it would then have been more obvious in Act 2 when she's in the wheelchair.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
it would have been more of a, oh my gosh, she'd have been moving around more in that first number and being more
Yeah.
vibrant. And if there's more movement in that first
Yeah,
number,
exactly.
then we'd be very, oh my gosh, she was this woman that was free and
Yeah.
now she's stuck in this chair.
Because I could see they were doing the mirror here on
Yeah.
that particular scene. I got that, the stylistic approach of it being mirrored. But she didn't use much of the stage in the first act. It was very much static, stand, delivery, like Park and Bark, which Richard likes to say.
Well, I
My
think
favourite.
this is
Park and Bellow, it's a
Park and
musical.
Bellow, yeah.
This is the consequence, though, of all of the ensemble numbers, because they're trying to get, when you're plotting a musical with the different songs, you're trying to get highs and lows, and you don't want the energy to be on the same level all the time. And obviously, because you've had like quite high energy songs before it, they're trying to bring, they're trying to give you something different, which is why when we have her singing Amazing, you've just had Waterloo before it, which is high energy, and Sydney right after it is high energy.
Yeah,
They're both
exactly.
ensemble pieces.
Yeah.
So they're trying to create, they couldn't have her doing, I mean, I suppose movement-wise, she could have been moving about more, but the actual song is a more sentimental song in a way.
Well, it's about her appreciating Muriel and thinking, you're amazing, you are, Muriel.
Yeah.
I just appreciate you. She could have been like moving her about the stage, going, oh, you're amazing, you're doing this or you're doing that, you know, look what you could, there's so much you could do within that space that I just think sitting down
I
was
think
so boring and
yeah.
just it was tedious, because I think if you're doing it stylistically, you know, it's just a gimmick. You don't actually need to do that at all, just to have the mirror effect, you know, because what are you trying to say here?
I think because you've had the movement either side of it, that's probably why they thought, oh, we've had so much movement, we just want the audience to focus on this and it be more of a intimate moment between the two of them.
Yeah.
But they could have done something slightly different with it. It could have still been intimate.
Well, they could have sang Fernando for a start.
It could have been more
Justice
intimate.
for Fernando.
Yeah. Without changing the song, it could have had more movement, possibly. Yeah. It didn't bother me as much as I think it bothered you. I think you were really bothered by it. I think you thought it was very static. I understood it, but I do get what you mean. It could have had a bit more movement in it.
Yeah, I mean, they might have well just been stood in concrete, rocking back and forth like a Lauren Hardy sketch. Do you know what I mean? That might have been a bit more entertaining than just being stuck.
They could have been like going about the cruise ship and like doing different things on the ship. Like they could have,
Now I'm trying to remember, but I don't think it was on a cruise in the.
Was it not a cruise?
I think it was a holiday resort.
It was a holiday resort, yeah.
So you know, maybe they realised we're on a ship, we're on the top deck of a cruise ship, we can't move very far. And I think maybe that they did it for aesthetics of having the water running behind them on the cruise ship. If they start a water, you know, because the back of the ship was the projection. And what I'm saying is, it's like they almost put themselves in a position where they couldn't move. Whereas if they'd have done just a beach resort with a beach or a waves lapping at the background, they could have moved more.
They could have been in a jacuzzi.
They could have.
Because that would mirror her being in the water
and
her getting with the guy who's a swimmer.
Interesting thought there.
I just thought about it. Though it means nothing.
The choreography in general was outstanding. I mean, particularly in Life is a Competition, which was where we're in the pool.
I don't remember that scene.
Speedos.
It was.
Oh, yeah, no, it's me now.
It was fantastic.
Sorry,
I've
Budgie smugglers. Sorry, it's Australian, isn't it? Budgie smugglers.
Yeah, I just
Thongs.
think.
Oh no, that's what they wear on the feet.
I think the thing is, there was so much canon movement and there was just so much going on. My eye did not know where to look. It was so exciting, you know, and the movement really did look like they were training, so they were stretching at points, so they had all of these very, you know, angular movements to show that they were stretching, and then like they were looking like they were swimming, and it was very clever how they did it. It looked like synchronized swimming at points, and I just thought it was really, really clever the way that they did it.
Just to go back to what we said about the static scene.
Yeah, I think the thing is, whenever you're writing a show, like the main thing that producers are going to ask and directors are going to ask is, why now? Like, why is this relevant? And I think that's a really good question. So I think what happens is, a lot of the time, creative teams feel pressurised, maybe. Not pressurised, but they might just think, oh, you know, maybe you're right, and the thought's been planted there, and so they think, oh, let's modernise this and try and make it up to date. But I think there are some like themes that are timeless, and that they, you know, some topics that it doesn't matter whether it's in the 80s or it doesn't matter whether it's, you know, now, like it's timeless.
Well, it's still relevant. Had they have kept it in the time period it was meant to be in, we would still take something from it because it's still relevant.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, it's like, if you're setting something in the past as well, if you're going to update it, then it can sometimes have a massive effect on storyline, and just views have changed over the years, and so it can change your story, and that is where the problem lies. If you change things up too much, then it's not what it was. It's not the original story, and you're fighting against the original film against this new version of what you've created. And I think audiences want you to sort of be true to the original film within reason, you know. And I think if you change things too much, like sometimes you can change things and sometimes it works. Like I think there was a few things in Mrs. Doubtfire that were changed, and I actually quite liked some of those changes.
Yeah, but they worked.
Yeah, they worked. So it can work
Because the
with
storyline
changes.
didn't deviate.
Yes.
It just enhanced it.
Yes, and that's the thing.
difference.
So you can update things because they had that chef scene, I think,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, that was
worked.
great.
but
that was.
all that did was take from the point where she burnt her fake boobs when she was in the film cooking.
Yeah.
It just took it from that to she's got to learn how to cook, so let's do it bigger. That's all it did.
Yeah.
It didn't detract from the actual content of the story, did
And
it?
I think you can make subtle changes like that and it work and be fantastic. But I think if you deviate too much, I think then your core audience might get lost. And I think that when you're updating, you have to be just aware of this, I think.
I think also you've got to remember that as a paying customer, you look for repeat business and you look for people telling other people to see it.
Yeah.
And if it's so far from the original and it's actually, you're a bit like, I won't go and see that again. You know, for something like this, you're selling it based on the name. And there's a lot of things out there at the moment that are selling the production based on the name because it's well known or established, and they don't live up to the actual production or the original
The
work.
expectation.
And it's really frustrating because there's a lot of things out there that are doing just that and selling a production based on a name.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's the cheap way to do it. Let's produce a piece of theatre that is based on something just to make money.
Yeah.
And I feel like, but they're one-hit wonders. You go and see it, you'll never go and see it again. Whereas if they do a good piece, you'll go and see it more than once and you'll repeat or wait for it to come round again. You know, the likes of Blood Brothers, they now don't. They've got a license to print money now because it's established enough. But that didn't start from a film. That didn't start. You know, but that's made its name by being a solid piece of musical theatre. And now you've got things that are being shoehorned in production-wise based on the name of a production, and it's really frustrating because some people have worked really hard at writing decent theatre, and these productions you're just going to see because the name, well, it's going to be this or it's going to be that. It doesn't mean you're going to get a great show because it's based on the name of something, you know, and it's getting a little frustrating.
Like Marigold Hotel
Exactly.
went for that for the name, and that was a bit mediocre at best. And yeah, yesterday I've just come back from seeing the Book of Mormon again, so that's my third time seeing it.
Exactly.
You know, and that was brilliant.
But it's not. It's not a film. It's not a book. It's not.
No.
It's just, you know, and I think I worry that it discredits these people that work really hard to write standout theatre productions that are really good, and yet somebody who's made a name for something just because they've got the branding or they've got the branding agreement that means they can make money on it, and there's so many other productions that are so much better that don't get a look in because of that. You know.
I think the thing is when you've got a name, you know you've already got an audience
Exactly.
and bums on seats straight away. Like
Yeah.
you don't need celebrity casting or anything
No.
like that. You've already got a name for yourself. And I think the thing is as well about updating things, it can sometimes detract from, you know, the story. And personally for me, I think nostalgia's all right. Like, I don't understand why we
Well, I
we
suppose
can't
it's our
tell
own
a
little safe
story.
space, isn't it?
Like, I think, you know, there's certain films that maybe certain generations haven't seen.
Exactly.
But there's still, you know, generations that would go and watch it. And I think you could bring in, you know, those younger generations and they would still love it. I just think if a film is timeless, it doesn't matter if you set it, you can still set it in the time it was originally set, and I think people would still go and watch it and enjoy it. I think, you know, it's.
I agree, and I'm telling you now, if they do,
Oh,
if they do Return to Oz the musical and change it and update it, I will lose my rag.
Exactly.
I'm not happy about that. Not that they've done it yet.
No, I think
But I'm waiting for it.
I think when we talk about modernising productions, I think what what people get lost in when they modernise is we've got to write technology into a production.
Yeah.
We've got to write the mobile phone in, or we've got to write a tablet or a computer or this, that and the other. It's like a lot of these films that are being adapted were at a time when actually the storyline didn't need an interaction on a mobile or a social media or a this, that and the other. It created a following just by being niche and being a production that, or a film that people found out about. And some people didn't watch it when it came out because they couldn't watch it until it came out on video. You know, you had to wait years sometimes before that film then became something you could watch. And some people didn't watch them till the 2000s when they released in the 90s. You know, you know, Heathers, that's been made into a musical, but the film, not everybody's seen Heathers, the film. You know, it's completely...
It's very dark.
But it's very... But it's, you know, but what I'm saying is that it's like, that kept it in that era. That wasn't social media driven. The musical itself was still set in an era that didn't have technology. And I think I think it's almost like people feel obliged to make sure that we put things in these productions, and I just think
you can update but adapt. So
exactly,
like Pygmalion, and then My Fair Lady, Pretty Woman.
Exactly,
you know, we'll probably get another version where it's some girls being taught by Chat GPT or something like that.
Exactly.
You know,
but I think having phones and things like that, it's not actually as interesting staging wise, because somebody receiving a text isn't the same as somebody being there in person and seeing something happen for themselves. Like it's more dramatic to have things happen in person. Like I think the whole technology route distances for certain scenes, and it's not as dramatic, it's not as interesting. Like I actually want to be there in person with the characters. I want them seeing it, you know, there for themselves. I don't want them getting a text. Like that's just...
Well, it strips away the performance side, and also theatre and productions and films should be a bit of escapism from reality.
Yeah.
And I think we're too scared to create reality, like escapism almost, that you need to be taken to a place that doesn't always have to have everything in the real world. It can be its own entity.
If we just bring it back to Muriel's Wedding, the musical, what I wanted to ask you, Jem, is in terms of the songs, would you like to probably explain to us what each of a particular song and what they do? Like we've already discussed the opening number sets up everybody's certain things.
Well, I think really, like, you know, from like I said, the first number, the bouquet, is the I Want song. You know, expressing what she wants. Meet the Heslops is a bit of like further exploration of meeting the family. It's like it's an alternative voice.
Okay.
So it's really important in a musical that you've got more than one voice. So when we meet them... And
they had their own little patter, didn't they?
Yeah, they had their own patter. They've got their own musical motif. I noticed like sometimes they actually use sounds instead of lyrics to just get that across. Like
a bit like a TV theme song. So if somebody comes in that's a baddie, you hear their theme.
Yeah.
Is it something like that?
Yeah, so it just repeats itself. It's something that's memorable. Like, I think that's the thing. A lot of these songs were very hooky.
Yeah.
Having a good melody, having a hook that repeats, something that repeats and sticks in our brains. Our brains like repetition.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it memorable, which is why the ABBA songs are so great. Like, you know, they're
money,
yeah,
I do.
Yeah, the repetition of the lyrics, the repetition of the melody, it's very catchy. And I think generally the songs in the show were very catchy, but like,
even though we can't remember them.
Yes, but they were catchy. And I think the issue was, like I said, we've mentioned several times, is that they were fighting against well-known songs. If you know a song already, you're going to go home remembering the song you already know. Whereas if the ABBA songs hadn't have been in this, I actually think you could go home and remember some of these songs if the ABBA songs had not been there. I do think that it's not perfect rhyme. They use a lot of slant rhymes. So together and forever is a slant rhyme. So they use a lot of that. And that is a choice. It's not right or wrong. Like, you get some people that are in perfect rhyme camp and they want everything to rhyme perfectly. Like I say, it is a choice. This had a more of a pop vibe to it. Yeah. And I think pop generally lends itself to not perfect rhyme. Like, it can be argued, and like it can be argued that perfect rhyme is more pleasant on the ear. Yeah. But that it can be argued that as well that sometimes it's more lazy rhyming to do imperfect rhyme. I don't mind imperfect rhyme personally. I think it doesn't take me away from the song. I think the reason why in the industry they expect perfect rhyme more often is because I think we spoke about this before we started recording, but when you're hearing lyrics for the first time, you have to imagine that you're on a train and you're seeing scenery. Yeah. And once you've seen that scenery and you've gone past it, that's it. You're never seeing that same scenery again. Mm-hmm. So the lyrics are the scenery. So when you have an imperfect rhyme, sometimes because your ear was expecting to hear something perfect, your brain, and it doesn't hear something perfect, your brain can sometimes go, oh, did I hear that right? Or it can.
It's I suppose it's a bit like a key that's been played on a piano wrong, or the wrong
jarring.
Note.
It feels jarring, and because your brain was expecting a certain rhyme, which then doesn't happen, then you don't hear the next line. Yes. So then you get lost. So that's the argument for perfect rhyme. However, I would say as well that generally in this day and age, a lot of people listen to pop music. I think our ears are more used to, imperfect rhyme. It's a personal preference. It's just, on the course I'm on, we are trained to do perfect rhyme because it's industry standard and that's what they expect. But I think we're seeing a lot of musicals. Like, if you look at loads of the Broadway shows, a lot of them do not adhere to perfect rhyme all the time. And I think if you've got perfect rhyme all the time, there's only so many words that rhyme with each other. Whereas if you use imperfect rhyme, it provides more creativity. You can be a bit more, you can go a bit out of,
I suppose if it's not perfect, you could utilise that in a way where the audience assume you're going to say something, especially if it's a funny one, like it's a mislead. Yeah. If someone says something that's going to be a rude word, and the exact rude word is going to rhyme with that, and then they just say it's not. Yeah. I suppose it could be quite useful in a comic tone.
And sometimes as well, perfect rhyme and imperfect rhyme in musicals can be used deliberately. So like you might, for example, have a very educated character using perfect rhyme, for example, or somebody might use imperfect rhyme for a specific reason. So it's a choice made for that character to say something about them. However, I don't feel that's been done in this show. It's just a choice that they've gone for that pop theme. So it doesn't say anything really about the characters. They've just generally done...
They've kept it in that world.
They've kept it in that pop genre, really, I think.
Is there anything else in here that we probably need to know, like what you would describe as the ending of an act, or the beginning, the opening numbers?
I think the gutter should have been the finale for Act 1.
Yeah. I think we're all in agreement with that, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we said that earlier. And I think, you meant to end Act 1 on a cliffhanger. Like, everything's meant to have come, to a head, like at the end of Act 1, like, and you're meant to be thinking all the problems, everything that could go wrong to the main character should have gone wrong. Like, it should have built up from the beginning of the act, or, until we're at a point where we're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst. This is the peak. This is the peak. So like the finale of Act 1 should be the peak that we reach in point of chaos. You know what I mean? So
it's typical how you also write stage plays as well.
yeah,
How you build it up, and this is the point of no return at this point.
Yeah.
Everything's like crescendoing downhill.
yeah, we need
with
to get that
twists and turns like that.
audience back in. Like
Yeah.
we need to be at a point of chaos. They do it so well in lots of shows, Defying Gravity, that's the point of no
Yes,
return.
yeah.
I think they do it in Tootsie as well, like he kisses the leading lady when he's dressed as a woman, and it all kind of is
Yeah.
like, oh no, he shouldn't have done that, and it kind of usually ends on a blackout, a very abrupt blackout usually. And there's some shows
It's like a realization of the character of where they're going to go next. Now they've reached this point.
Yeah, it's kind of like you can tell sometimes when a show doesn't always not do it successfully, because, for example, Avenue Q, the end of Act 1 is a fine line. Now, I love Avenue Q. I'm a big fan, but and I was in it recently, but a fine line at the end of that number, nobody realised it was the end of Act 1.
Ah, yeah.
So people were like, not sure, because I don't know, and yet it was, it did fill that finale space, like, it was that, I suppose, a sad song, but it didn't feel like, as dramatic as maybe some other. You expect extreme drama from your finale song, and that's why I think The Gutter should have been that song, because then when we came into Here Comes the Bride, we came into what I believe should have been an opening number for Act 2, because it, once you've been in the interval, like everybody's had a few drinks, everybody's had a bit of a chat, you need like a kind of a seat, like a song that goes boom, that everybody goes, oh wow, like, like you kind of blasted back into your seat, and it's entertaining, it grabs your attention straight away. And I feel like Here Comes the Bride would have done that perfectly. I'm not saying Never Stick Your Neck Out wasn't a good song, but I don't think it was the oomph that Here Comes the Bride. It wasn't a very good song. It didn't have it was fun, but I don't think it wasn't pointless. To me an Act 2 opener. But yeah, I just think for Act 2, you need to really come in with something fun, like, and draw the audience back in.
That Never Stick Your Neck Out, that was a deviation of the show, really. It didn't need to be there.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
You usually have a romance song somewhere in a show, which we got. So we had like Strangely Perfect Stranger, which was between Muriel and Bryce. That was very typical. You usually, if you don't have like a love interest in a show, it might be a platonic friend or something like that, or there's usually that kind of song in a show. There's a comedy number. I'm trying to see like what
I suppose that would be the Can't Hang. Would that be the comedy one where they're a bit bitchy,
I think
maybe?
the Can't Hang was funny, but that also was the alternative voice, like they were like kind of the villains as well, so it kind of doubled up in what it did. But yeah, like it did hit a lot of the the plot point, the musical beats. It hit the musical beats to from what I can see.
Here's a question for you then, Richard. Last year we went to see Patricia Routledge, and when she was talking at Derby, great lengths of her career.
Yeah,
she said something which we'd never heard of. Well, I know I hadn't heard of. The 11 o'clock number.
Yeah.
What's the 11 o'clock number in this one?
Let's have a look. I don't know whether she actually had like.
See, part of me, I think it's My Mother. Yeah. I think that's the 11 o'clock because, and that's why this is a bit confused, because it's not the, for me, that's the moment. It's the down to earth moment.
Yeah.
For me, that's the moment.
I think you're right.
I was wondering if it was between I Do and Never Stick Your Neck Out, the bouquet, that section there, because
it's usually more ballad-like,
isn't
it?
It's
the 11
more power
ballad.
Like, it's more the realisation of everything. It's like the moment, and I feel like My Mother's the bit, just because of how the power of it, well, what it's meant to be. But this is all a bit confused anyway. It's all a bit all over the place.
Yeah.
Because what I was going to say is on the interval, something you said about the end number of the first act. You also need to leave an audience with something to talk about in the interval.
Yeah.
Exactly,
because if you walk out of that auditorium and go, well, it was all right. If you don't leave them a cliffhanger or something to talk about, then you don't get a murmur and a mumble and a like what we're going to see in the second half. Or if you don't shock an audience to the point of like leave it hanging, if you leave, it's not just musicals. If the production you write leaves people hanging, they want to come back.
Yeah.
They don't need to be told we're now going to start again. They want to be sat back in those chairs, and that's where the strength of that was all a bit weird, wasn't it?
If you have the interval after Here Comes the Bride, what's anyone going to be talking about?
That's
in the
what I mean.
interval? There's
Yeah,
not
exactly.
going to be a buzz. I mean, if
There was
anyone's buzzing,
confusion. There was
to get to the
confusion.
toilet.
Because you've already advanced from, she's lost her legs, we've had a bit of interaction, then Here Comes the Bride. It's like we've already moved on from that. It's like it's almost like they were too scared to end on a disability in the first half, and it's like, but it's not about making any form of point against that disability. It's just saying that her life has completely changed at that point.
It's a point
and it's
of
a
no
life-changing
returning away
moment.
for Muriel and also
and for Rhonda.
Yeah.
Rhonda's life completely flashes in front of her.
Because-
And that's the bit where what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
It's that,
and also, how is Muriel going to change?
Exactly.
Now her friend has lost the use of her legs, or this thing has happened to a
and then I think that's where I'm coming to when we look right back, where the length of time they've spent together living in this house in Sydney wasn't spent enough on. Because then when, what's the significance of the two of them suddenly having one of them now not being able to walk? It's like in the film, she spent a lot of time caring for Rhonda, whereas this felt like we've just fast forwarded that bit now. We're already like in the next bit. It's like the whole point of the whole point of the storyline is that's a life-changing moment, and I feel like we've just brushed past the life-changing moment to just move into Never Stick Your Neck Out, which was like wasted.
So that song Sydney, it was all about the Sydney and the whole gay culture and stuff like that, wasn't it?
It's about escaping to Sydney as well.
Yeah, but do you think it should have been more about Rhonda and Muriel in Sydney rather than Sydney itself?
It should have been, because I think it was almost like the postcard mute song to get them to open the world up to this is what Sydney's like, because you've just gone from the cruise and done Amazing and done Waterloo, which is the scene at the holiday. Then they've moved to Sydney, but they've been in Sydney quite a while before all of this happens.
And that could have been like a montage.
Yeah, exactly.
See, Sydney for me was like a world-setting song again. It was very similar to Sunshine State of Mind. It was basically saying, hey guys, we've now moved to a different area, and these are the people here. Whereas I understood it because it was saying you can be anybody you want to be here. So it did, narrative-wise, add to the story, because it's saying, hey, Muriel, you can recreate yourself. So I thought that was great. But like Richard said, we could have done with more time with Rhonda. Like, maybe it could have been a song where Rhonda said, you can be anybody here. And, maybe Rhonda could have been leading her through Sydney, and they could have been meeting these characters together as a pair, rather than it just be a complete ensemble number being like, hey, Sydney. Whereas she could have been like, hey,
Because also there's...
I can show you the world.
I think what was missed as well, the reason I talk about the shop and the neon shop and all that, is in the film there's a scene where Rhonda works opposite. The reason she got a job in the video shop is because she works opposite in another shop, and the job comes up while Muriel's in Rhonda's shop. Yeah. So she applies for it. So when Bryce goes in the shop, Rhonda rings her from the other shop and sees her interact with this boy. Yeah. It's like,
so you've already built up their friendship.
You're building the link up that they've been living there long enough to get jobs and to do all, and that's what was missing. It's like, what does Rhonda matter?
It's all those little bits,
that whole...
And maybe we didn't want Rhonda saying you can be anyone you want to be, because she already actually is invested in Muriel as a person. But as she's kind of going around Sydney, that the other people still are kind of saying you can be anything you want to be to Muriel. So she gets that idea from the ensemble still, maybe not Rhonda. But, like, you know, just so you get that time together, so you build up their relationship.
Well, it could still work because we had the whole lie of Muriel saying she was trying to get away from her alleged boyfriend, Ian, I think it was.
Yeah, that she made up.
And that's why she was on the run. So
Yeah.
therefore, for her to go by Mariel instead of Muriel, you know, Rhonda could still be in that deluded state of, you can be anybody you want to be here then if you try to escape, you know. So it could still apply, I think.
Yeah.
With her singing that song.
Yeah, I think maybe it was too much of a generic, here we were in a new place kind of song. And I think it's such an easy trap to fall into. Think it's, and like I say, I think generally looking through this list of songs, I think they've done a really good job. Generally, I don't look at this. Every song that I've listened to has a narrative and it makes sense.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, it's so easy for songs to wibble and wobble about and not know what they are. Songwriting in itself is a very difficult craft that I don't think people realise. Just songwriting in itself is a hard craft. And so the songs all, you know, they all make sense. I don't ever feel like tripped up, like you said. I don't ever go, oh, what was that? Like, I don't feel like there's any blips. I feel like there's a straight narrative through the song. I understand what the song's trying to convey. So I think they've done a great, like I say, they've got great melodies. The lyrics are fun, quirky. And I think they've done a great job with it.
I have to agree. I did quite like some of the songs, but unfortunately they are forgettable for me because they're suffocated or sandwiched between the ABBA songs. You know,
I think we keep coming back to that, don't we? We keep coming back to the same point. We've probably said it over and over again because it's frustrating. Like, it's so frustrating because actually when I listen to all of these songs individually, I thought there was something to a lot of them. There was maybe a few that could have been slightly different, but with the book that they've got, I think they've done a good job with the book they've got.
Shall we move on and talk about the actors for a little bit? I think I'd have to give a shout out to Megan Ellis, who does take on the role of Muriel Heslop, because she did give a great performance as that, and it was believable.
Yeah,
whether or
it
not,
was.
whether or not
she embodied the character that they've written.
Yeah,
you know, that's the thing. As in, you know, it's where we've pulled apart the production as a piece. We've not pulled apart the performances were great.
And I think all the performances were great. You know, especially her family as well. That was I really like those because they were very close to the film family as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, they were.
And it was interesting to see Darren Day in this as well. I wasn't expecting to see him in this production at all.
No, he gets about a bit.
Father. Yeah. But you know when certain actors you just forget about them. You do.
I mean, I'm gonna put a special shout out for Stephen Madsen. I don't know why.
Oh, the swimmer.
Yeah, I don't know why I'd pick him out.
Well, it must have been the costume he wasn't wearing.
Yes, it was. I mean, Rhonda was good. You know, for the scene she was in.
Fantastic. You know? I thought Annabelle Marlowe did a fab job of that part.
She did, yes.
And Betty was good. I just think that, you know,
I think it was just a great cast. I think it was really well cast at that.
Very well cast. There was nobody that I thought, oh no, you're not right in that part. And there was a lot of multi-rolling as well going on throughout the show. Like I think, some of the popular kind of bullies also played the assistants in the bridal shops and things like that. So and I think some of them also doubled up as the ABBA.
And I was going to say the people that played ABBA,
they were amazing. They were,
and the humour they brought to it was brilliant.
It's very much like a double-edged sword because I thought they were well cast. They looked the part. Yeah. They were brilliant as ABBA.
Yeah.
But this was not ABBA the musical.
Yeah.
No.
And that's my issue.
Exactly.
But again, they were great.
Characterisation was spot on. The vocals were phenomenal. I didn't spot anybody struggling vocally, which you might expect. Sometimes, like if it's been a longer run. I mean, did we go earlier on in the run where...
We were pretty much...
towards the end.
We were towards the end, weren't we? And so that's what... There was no vocal fry or anything. There was no... you could... tell that they've been looking after their voice as well. I didn't feel like anyone was pushing. You know, sometimes you get people that are pushing for certain notes. I didn't get any of that. yeah, I felt like the balance between the voices felt right. The sound, the sound of the voices blended together well.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say,
What the tech is this?
Now, Richard, you like talking about the tech, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've touched on it already, haven't I suppose, in the first bit when we talked about the set and the fact that we used a lot of LED walls. And, I thought lighting and sound-wise, there wasn't really any drop mics or anything that stood out technically.
That's true, because sometimes whenever we do see a musical, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Jem, whenever they start singing a line, sometimes it is like turned down or turned off.
Or they've not turned it on in enough time because there's a couple of seconds delay before the actual mic kicks in, and people, they've not rehearsed that. And that is just as imperative to the production, because if you're mid-dialogue and you're not delivering, 2 seconds is a long time when it's one piece of script or one piece of...
It's that scenery passing by again. You miss it, it's
gone. Yeah. So we didn't have any of that. But also, what I find is, some of my bugbears is when people wear head mics and wear, they're either double mic'd or single mic, they still forget to throw the voice, or they still forget to talk at the right level. They expect the mic to do the work. And it's like, sometimes you still have to deliver. And I think that's just as important, because diction matters in these sort of productions, and hearing everything clearly matters.
Yeah.
Even if you are in an accent, you've got to make sure that you deliver your lines. It's like we've seen another production recently where there was mics along the front of the stage. Yes, there weren't head mics, but the character just wasn't throwing their voice loud enough, because in her head must have been, I've got mics on stage, I'm all right. You've still got to deliver your lines, otherwise we're not going to hear you.
And now it's time for
Rewind, Rewatch.
Right then, Rewind, Rewatch. And let's go with ladies first. Gemma.
Oh, you put me on the spot now.
Yes. What part of this musical would you like to rewind and watch again?
Oh, let me just go back to the song list to see which one I really liked. Can't Hang. I think the girls who were being mean, I thought they were brilliant. They were really fun. I think I was really massively invested in that. And I did like Strangely Perfect Stranger as well, like the romantic song between Muriel and Bryce. I thought they, 2 songs I could really get into. But I think there's so many points in this show that for me, I personally did enjoy this musical, and I liked Rhonda's songs as well. So there's a few points I could go back.
Bits definitely. What about you, Richard?
Mine's going to be basically the recreation of Waterloo, because I thought it actually lived up to the level of the film.
That was a good one.
Because of the fighting and the falling out in the background, everything
it was
there.
Chaotic.
But they put the chaos on stage, which was there in the film, and I just wish they'd approached it the same throughout. That then would have been would have had a lot more to talk about that was positive about some of the elements.
Yeah. For me, I'd like to rewind and rewatch Fernanda. Oh no, it didn't happen, did it?
Oh no, it didn't.
Damn it. No, honestly, Here Comes the Bride. I like that because ABBA was involved there, and I just like that scene. I thought it was really, really well done, and I like that.
Looked like a cake topper.
It was, and it was quite nice. Would you actually watch this show again?
I wouldn't without it work. It needs work.
Rework for Richard?
I think a little. I love the song so much.
Yeah.
So I think they could make tweaks to this that I think it could be successful. That if they just made the right tweaks to this to get it to flow better.
So we're all agreed the production company need to listen to our podcast, make changes on our notes, and then give us free invites, and we'll go and see it again. Yes.
Well, no, book
is
us
that
in
what
to
we're saying?
help them.
Yes, yeah, we'll be your dramaturgs.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I
Triple
love
threat.
it. Moving on to our final segment, as we say,
Call this a show?
right then, call this the show. To sum up then, please, we'll go with you this time, Richard.
For me, it's got promise. It just needs to tighten up the reason and purpose that it's there as a musical. I think, there's a lot going for this as a production, but just to step back and work on it might help loads.
Yep, okay, and Jem?
I think Richard's almost said it all there, really. I think it is very promising. Like I say, such good numbers, musical numbers. And I think if they just just looked at the book a bit more, I think this could be something that's memorable, that people would want to go back and rewatch. I think it just needs, the pacing issues need to be resolved, I think.
Yeah, and I'm in completely agreement both, and also to fine comb or pluck out a lot of the ABBA bits and probably tweak them just to make it less ABBA, just to focus more on the work that they've done for the songs. 'Cause they are good songs, but they are, as we've said again and again, it's a little bit crowded. But yeah.
And I think as well, it's one of those productions that the storyline itself lends itself well to a musical. It's got the makings and the depth of that a musical needs.
It does.
You know, it's not a loosely based production. It's something that the storyline is strong. You could make something of it.
It is strong, and it's a good story, and it's a good play, and it's a good show, and it should be a good musical. And I bought the T-shirt, so
Woo!
There we go. Woo! Scores then, please, Jem. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being I do in proper spit, and 1 being absolutely terrible, Muriel, what's it going to be?
I'd say a 7. I'd say it was pretty solid. I think, just needs that bit of work, but I think it was pretty solid. I just think they could have focused a bit more on the book.
Nice one. Richard?
It's getting a 6 from me.
Ooh. I'm going to probably say 7.5. I'm going to be a little bit more generous because that 0.5, I bought the T-shirt.
You did.
But they didn't put Fernando in, so maybe I should go back down to a 7 now for that. No, 7.5 is fine.
Yeah.
Just tweak it.
So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck? Tumbleweed? An audible shrug of the shoulders? A slow clap? A pleasant applause? Or a standing ovation? What will it be?
Pleasant applause.
No, it'll probably be then pleasant applause, because it definitely, it wasn't tumbleweed or anything like that.
And I'll say pleasant applause as well. Most agreeable.
So there we are. That's our discussion of Muriel's Wedding the Musical. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Stay tuned as we bring you more of our thoughts
and opinions
on many theatrical delights in future episodes. If you'd like to get in touch, email us at upstagedownsstagepod@gmail.com. You can always join in the chat to share with us your views of a production.
Also, make sure to follow, share, like and subscribe to all our channels so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of Upstage Downstage.
Sound effects then, please, Richard.
Pleasant applause.
Did you say applause? Right?
Pleasant applause.
Sometimes it's... Oh yeah, we don't say... You've listened to this
I know
podcast.
I know.
So we have a standing ovation, a pleasant applause.
Tumbleweed.
Well, there's tumbleweed, there's a train
Slow
wreck. Slow clap.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Because then
Why did you mute me? Oh, you've muted. Very rude.
You can't be close on that mic.
I'm going for it right now. I'm always going for it. In fact, I've gone and I've done it.
Yeah, that's really...
I loved every minute of it.
Are you alright on yours?
I think so. Is Gemma's alright?
Is it working, is it?
Yeah, we're doing okay. I'm going to just check the levels while I talk.
How are my levels for my little microphone here?
I don't know, you're looking at your own.
I'll have a look.
You're looking at your own.
I think you might have to turn my gain down or something, just down a fraction, because it's hitting the top.
Try that.
Let me see now. Does this look okay? Yeah, I think it's fine.
Is that not bad?
How are my levels for my little microphone here? Let me have a look. I'll have a look.
You can hear Rich.
Slightly, yeah.
Gain down or something, just down a fraction, because it's hitting the top.
1, 2.
Oh, are we going on 3?
We got 3. 1, 2, 3.
There we go.
There we go. We know where to put it in now. That's so Stephen doesn't sound out of sync and is delayed.
Oh, okay.
in his
I
recording.
never sound out of sync. I might
There
be
it is.
delayed.
Or in the sync, but you know.
Definitely in the sync.
Go on then. Yeah, carry on.
You just want me to say something?
Yeah, just talk
say
as normal.
Just normal.
Because I'm just going to check where we're at.
Explore the world of Porpoise Pit. Oh, it's Spit, not Pit. Porpoise Spit.
I
Oh,
think mine's alright.
it's hard to sing that, I reckon.
That where the baby cheeses are.
Baby cheeses. I had to get into an Australian accent. Baby cheeses.
Look at me, look at me,
Look at me.
I've got one thing to say to
Say
you.
you.
Dippity Bix.
That would have been a musical.
Now that's what I call a musical.
Kath and Kim would have been a good musical. Right. On today's episode, I can't keep it up. On today's episode, we'll be discussing Muriel's Wedding the musical. We saw this production at Leicester Curve on the 19th of April 2025.
You bored me.
Wow. Wow.
No, I'm joking.
The show is a Made at Curve production. I'm going to put "and" there.
Just put a full stop.
No, because it's got "and" a
This show is
collaboration
a
between
Made at Curve
Curve.
production, a collaboration between Curve, Leicester. Yeah, this show is a Made at Curve production. Full stop. A collaboration
Yeah,
between.
okay.
Don't argue with me.
The show is a Made at Curve production, a collaboration between Curve Leicester. Oh no, what Curve Leicester? Yeah, I can't keep saying Leicester Curve and then Leicester Curve Leicester. No, that's fucking wrong.
No, between Curve, Leicester, and Global Creatures.
Yeah, but I've already said Leicester Curve above it, so I'm a bit like,
No, it's a Made at Curve production.
yeah.
The show is a Made at Curve production, a collaboration between Curve, Leicester, and Global
Yeah.
Creatures in
No, no.
association with Sydney
Yeah,
Theatre
I'm on it.
Company.
The show is a Made at Curve production, a collaboration between Curve, Leicester, and I'm putting an in and a featuring a book by the film's writer and why did I pause? No comma. Featuring a book by the film's writer and director. Featuring a book by the film's writer and
Diet.
Featuring a book by the film's writer and director P.J. Hogan, music and lyrics by Kate Miller Hideki. Music and lyrics by Kate Miller Hideki and Kia Nuttall. Oh, that's yeah. Okay. Music and lyrics by Kate. Featuring a book by the film's writer and director. Featuring a book by the film's writer and director Oh fucking hell.
PJ Duncan.
PJ Duncan. I think that's where my head's going. Featuring a book by the film's writer and director P.J. Hogan, music and lyrics by Kate Miller Hideki and Kia Nuttall, as well as additional songs by Abba's Benny Anderson and Bjorn Ulvaeus. Is that right? Ulvaeus.
Bjorn Ulvaeus.
I'm just going to do Benny and Bjorn. As well as additional songs by Abba's Benny and Bjorn and Stig Anderson.
Yeah. Carry on. This is musical.
As well as songs by Abba's Benny and Bjorn and Stig Anderson. This musical celebrated its world premiere.
Yeah.
This musical celebrated its world premiere in 2017 in Sydney, winning numerous awards, including 5 Helpman Awards and 7 Sydney Theatre Awards. I rushed that last.
Just go from as well as additional songs by Abba's.
Yeah. As well as additional songs by Abba's Benny and Bjorn and Stig Anderson. Hold on. Is he part of ABBA?
Yeah, he's the
Yeah, of
fifth
course
member,
he is,
isn't he?
So there we are.
There we are!
So there we are. That's our discussion of Muriel's Wedding the musical.
You're terrible, Muriel.
Let me do it again. You can do that anyway.
You just bet.